Welcome back. We are here for another episode of Nobody's Muses. Hi, Crystal.
Hi, Rachel.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing
good.
all right. I'm ready to
Good.
get through this episode so I can get to episode 3. So
Episode 3 was so good.
yeah.
So we're here to talk about Daisy Jones and the Six. We're diving
Yes.
in deep to the show, the book, the audiobook, the behind the scenes stuff, the music, the culture, the times. That's why you're only hearing about episode 2 from us at this point, even though we know Friday they released the last 2 episodes. So if you're still needing your Daisy Jones and the Six fix, we've got that for you, because we're going to dissect into episode 2 today. I know last week when we started off, we said we're going to talk about 1 and 2. And then we got to talking and we took up the entire time talking about episode 1.
An hour and a half on episode 1. So I don't
So
think
don't forget you can find us in all of your favorite podcast streaming services, as well as YouTube, and on Instagram. You can find us at Nobody's Muses on the gram.
Yeah.
So,
and if you have any comments or things that you want to point out, please email us at nobodiesmuses@gmail.com.
Excellent. Let's go.
Okay, so track 2, I'll Take You There, written by Jenny Klein, once again directed by James Ponsoldt. So
he's doing a good job so far.
Yeah, and I'll Take You There is the Staples Singers song. Which is, I think, an interesting, I don't know, I'm wondering why they chose this song. One reason I think is it's a song that sounds happy, but it's actually really, really sad song if you listen to the lyrics.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, that juxtaposition is always interesting in songs. So I'm wondering if that's something to do about it, or if it's maybe more literal as we get through this. What does the I'll Take You There mean?
Maybe it's about Teddy.
Yes.
Maybe it was chosen because of Teddy.
Yes. So
we get into. All right. So we start out and Teddy is on the Merv Griffin show, which they got the set right, man. It was pristine.
Yes.
It was pristine. But here's the thing. I love the character who is playing Teddy.
Mm-hmm.
He's perfect to me. He really does a good representation. However, in the book, Teddy was this fat British dude.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big difference there. But again, as we've mentioned, they've taken some opportunities to diversify the cast, which I have to say, I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. But when you read the book, it's, he is very much a overweight, British dude. I kind of see that the guy who was the manager for like all the boy bands, Lou Pearlman was his name. They ended up like suing the guy. That's who I kind of envisioned, a British version of that when they started out. But we got Teddy, and we got the Teddy that we're seeing on the show, and I'm digging it.
So you think he is a Lou Pearlman figure in the book, and I was thinking he is Peter Grant, who was the manager of Led Zeppelin, who was a big giant fat man. Really leaned into that and was kind of instrumental in making, I would say he is instrumental in making kind of corporate rock because of what he did with Led Zeppelin. And he he was also a bit of a kind of a thug. Like his people got paid, and he's just an interesting person. If you read any articles about him, he was very much a character, and just known for kind of being like, I'll tear it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of mix, but I do think that, gosh, I mean, the actor who plays Teddy is got so much gravitas to him, and just like immediately likable. Immediately you can see why these people look up to him. And as he says in this, he goes, I never pictured myself being a father figure.
Yeah.
And I think that is definitely the main theme of this episode, is about it's about family. I think a lot of it,
family of choice.
Family you choose. So as we go through, this is so they show up at Rod's apartment.
So we've met Rod. We've met Rod, the road manager, Rod Reyes, right? Reyes?
I believe so, yes.
We met Rod in Pittsburgh. He told us all the things that we need to do. And so they're doing them.
Yep.
But we're a little naive about the way that I thought they were a little naive in the way in which they went about it. But, you know, they're supposed to be 19, 20, 18-year-old kids. So it's understandable that they took his list to be literal and jumped on into it.
It's super cringy, honestly. When they're like, oh yeah, and we're gonna need an apartment and we're gonna need this and
some money and we need some gigs. It's like that's not how this thing works.
Yeah.
They quickly found out from him.
I mean, I do think that he was more generous than he had to be. I mean, I think he's actually quite generous to them. Once again, the wig is terrible, but you know, I dig the very short robe. And anytime we get to see Tim Oliphant's legs, that's fine with me.
I didn't catch it, but you know what would have been perfection is that shorty robe and then those booty kind of things that the men wore in the, you know, booties. We know the little short boots that they beetle boots that they would wear in the 60s and the 70s. I think the shorty robe with the beetle boots would have been just a vibe that would have worked well for this time period.
Or like I always think of kind of like the David Crosby-esque moccasin, you know. That's always or Stephen Stills often wore a moccasin. So he says, he goes, well, I can't do all that, but I can
get you gigs.
I get you a gig at Filthy McNasty's, and it is on the Strip.
And you know there's a Filthy McNasty's in Fort Worth.
There is?
There's a Filthy McNasty's in Fort Worth in the Stockyards. It has been there forever, and it is pretty much the same thing that Rod described for the Filthies that's on the Strip in Hollywood. So the one in Fort Worth is pretty much the same thing, maybe more honky tonk. But yeah, it's a dive bar where they happen to have a stage.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what Filthies was there in Hollywood too.
That's hilarious. I wondered why I felt like that name sounded familiar, and I thought, well, maybe it was like, was it a real club?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a real club in Hollywood. I'm gonna assume it was because
maybe it's like
they've used everything. You know, they haven't had to make up any fake names or fake clubs or fake bands or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure it's an authentic Hollywood strip club at some point in time, but it definitely is still a running bar in Fort Worth that you can go to on any random night of the week.
That's funny. That's a quick Google search would find that out, but I don't feel like doing it. So they get the gig, and then Graham, who has been on a mission since last week, he gets Karen's number and asks her to join. He doesn't really ask her. Billy ends up asking her because he just can't, muster up the courage to do it.
Graham can't form the words.
And so Billy very cockily says, do you want to be in the best band in the world? And then Karen says, get Camila on the line. And she says, are they worth it? And Camila says, yes.
I wouldn't be here. I think she said, I wouldn't be here if they weren't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which again, now we've seen a formation of another female friendship that will be strong throughout the course of this. But yeah, she said, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think they were worth it.
Well, and if you look, I mean, Karen makes a comment like, yeah, these guys that I was with, they're not going anywhere. And they really were, like, they just showed them as being losers. And like, I think it was pretty implied that a lot of them were drugged out, like on heroin or something. It was more than just being like dirty dudes,
Yeah.
So,
or crappy players.
Yeah. So then we cut to a weird scene where it's almost like kind of like suspenseful as Karen is getting into her apartment. I mean, Simone is walking into her apartment and she finds Daisy there. And I just don't understand why they decided to go with that tone for it. Like, because they really extended it out and made you think something bad was in her apartment. And then it's like, oh, there's Daisy.
Who just randomly showed up.
Yeah.
And broke in.
Yeah. And basically, I found your key in the pot. And I mean, I just that was one of those ones, like, I just really would have, if I'd been the Amazon person who was giving notes, been like, we don't need all that. Like, she could just be surprised at finding Daisy in her apartment. We don't need this kind of weird suspenseful music. I don't know. It was weird to me.
But I
But
think some of it may have been, I thought, is that with Daisy's naive nature at that point in time, she didn't really understand the concept of boundaries.
yeah,
And so she just didn't really see any problem with finding somebody's key in their flower pot and just making themselves at home, because she was looking for a home. She didn't want to live at
yes,
home anymore with her parents, which this evolvement here is extremely different from the book, because
yes,
the book, I think we saw more Simone being that big sister
yes,
to Daisy. And in the show, it was more of a mutual friendship,
yeah.
um,
They're equals more in
equal
the show.
peers.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where which I like the friendship and how it ends up playing out in the show, but very different from what we saw, because in the book, and I think you mentioned this last week, Simone was very much, you got to go to school, you got to graduate. I'm the only person
Mhm.
that showed up to her graduation.
Yeah.
So we saw that big sister kind of attitude, whereas this played out to be more of a peer-to-peer friendship. But yeah, it was, I don't know why they did it like that, but it moved the story along, I guess, they thought.
Well, and I think it's interesting to note. I feel like in this episode, the chunks, like the Daisy chunks and the Dunn brothers chunks, are getting smaller. So, like in the first episode, we had a long chunk with Daisy seeing what she was like as a little girl, and we have a kind of a long chunk with the Dunn brothers, and now it's moving faster.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I think it's because it's building to where they're together. Um, so Daisy wants to be her roommate, and she goes, "I can't live there anymore." And she goes, "I can get a job." And Simone's like, "Not cooking because the food is terrible." And um, you know,
But she brought wine.
yes, she did.
She
So
she was a good guest in that point.
yes, and
She
so
showed up with wine.
and then we cut to 1997, Camila talking about their first place. So we're kind of mirroring. We've got, this is Daisy's first adult place. And this is, because for what I can tell, definitely the boys were still living with their mom. Camila was still living with her family. This is their first place as adults in
Mhm.
Laurel Canyon. And the
Yeah.
house in Laurel Canyon that they chose is so perfect. It just looks like everything I've read about Laurel Canyon and what the houses were like, because they were kind of rickety shacks and just kind of thrown together. Not like now where Ellen owns a huge mansion in Laurel Canyon, but back then
Yeah.
it was. Um, and of course, it would be a place that now people who are millionaires live, because it's right there by the strip. You're right in the city, so
Mhm.
but you're up in the mountains. So
The thing that I noticed about Camila talking about that first place is you could see it in her eyes and in her tone, and I could hear it in her tone. She got very nostalgic
mhm,
about remembering and talking to our narrator about what that was like to start that life together with Billy and with the band and them starting out in Laurel Canyon. You could just see it visually in her eyes, and you could tell she was reminiscing, and just kind of thinking back to a time where, we can all think that as we look back on our lives, those times where as young adults, life was a whole lot simpler. It was not quite as, I don't know, you were still coming into your own and starting that adult life, but it was a heck of a lot easier, than what happens when you get into your 30s and your 40s as far as life goes, in my
yeah.
opinion.
I mean, kind of the hardest thing in your life is that you're broke
Yeah.
versus, the true adult stuff that starts
Yeah.
happening. Sometimes way too soon for some of us, but yes, it's
Yes.
that, like, you're more worried about how am I going to, make rent, not anything else.
And where am I gonna go out this weekend kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
You're not worried about, 401ks and health insurance premiums and
Yeah,
itemizing your taxes and things.
exactly. Hope to just to have, yes.
But we also see coming, then we start the shot with Camila and Billy in bed, and Camila is filming Billy, and then that bedroom,
Yeah.
I know it sounds crazy, but that bed, like there's just so much detail. I mean, so much attention to detail from the clothes, the hair, the jewelry, the set design, the aesthetic. They got somebody who was paying attention, because if you look at that bed, I'm sorry, I know it sounds crazy, but the linens and the pillows and the bedspreads, everything that they picked was just so it was so good and it was so spot on. And sometimes you see these shows where they will harken back to a different period of time and they don't get it. They miss the point. They aren't true to that time period. But to me, that bed, I don't know why. I just was like, that bed is very much of the time period. Everything about it. And the room itself,
Yeah.
everything about it was there.
Yeah.
So that was just, and then again, Camilla is taking the video or taking the film. She's using the Super 8. Was that a Super 8 camera?
It was probably either or just 8mm. It
Okay.
might have just probably been 8mm.
Probably would have been just an 8mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But she's taking footage of him and he's sitting there playing. He grabs the camera from her and flips the switch. And I can tell you, as somebody who does photography, and has been shooting for a while, photographers, we typically don't like to have the camera flipped out on us.
Mhm.
We like to be behind it and capturing moments. We don't like to have our moments captured very much.
I would also say that, it was not like when you use an iPhone, like you kind of had to be kind of thoughtful about what you were filming, because you had to buy film and then you had to go get it processed. So
there is something to be said for that. And when you try to explain that to kids nowadays, they're just total, like, you had to buy film, you had to take the film.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was really exciting when we started having like 24-hour turnaround on our film, but there were some points where film, if you were shooting 8mm film, that was never a 24-hour turnaround. That had to be shipped off to a special lab and be processed, and then you got it back, and you could have screwed up the settings and everything on there could have been blurry and you lost everything.
Yeah. Like, well, and there is a very good chance that my parents still have film that has not ever been developed, because my parents, we are not a photography family and had the best intentions many times. And like, there's stuff that I got that was stuff from like when I was little that I finally was like, I'm taking this, and like got it, developed in high school and college because I couldn't take it anymore. So and I actually have some stuff that me and Joe have shot, like on some toy cameras that we have that we still need to get. So developing film is, and especially like, film cameras, like, for movies, is home movies, was a big deal.
It was a real thing. It was a real thing. So something that I have heard other people mention about, we haven't really talked about it, was we have the opening sequence of the show. We talked about the Patti Smith song last week, but taking a look at actually what photos are there, a lot of that is stuff that probably, or I think they intended for it to appear as though it was shot from Camilla's viewpoint.
Yes.
So we see her throughout this capturing all of these memories,
right,
of not only her and Billy, but of the six as a whole. So she's not only reflecting on these memories from her own memory, as she sits down and talks to our narrator, but we see visually throughout the series Camila's memories being captured through film or through video, or through
photos,
still photography, or through film.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I keep meaning to do like a really like nerdy analysis for each lyric and each photo, but I just haven't had time to do that. We'll do that. That'll be at a later date.
We'll get there. All right. So Karen shows up.
And the guys are
she walks into all I could think of was that she walked into like Peter Pan and the Lost Boys.
Yes.
Literally in their tidy whities playing pirates.
Yes. And like, and I could just smell it. There's one of my favorite Westerns is The Cowboys. It's one of John Wayne's last movies. And a guy comes in to, he's like a wagon hand, and he comes in to help, and it's all these boys, and he walks into their bunk room and he's like, this room smells of boy. And that's what I was like, oh, I bet it smelled just like the boys wing at the dorm just had a funk that you could not believe how stinky it
Mhm.
was.
My house.
Yes, yes, stinky
growing
boys.
up with growing up raising two boys, there is a scent that is unique to them. But I will also say, having taught middle school girls, they don't have any. I think they get past their stinky point a lot quicker
Yes.
um, than boys do. But there is an aroma. I'm down the hall from the 19-year-old room who just moved out this year to go to college. His room still smells, even though we've cleaned it. It still smells uniquely like him.
Boy.
Boy.
So
But yeah.
so they moved Karen into the a room that they think is haunted because they think the old lady died in there. And that room to me is also kind of perfect of because a lot of times in shows they're like, if somebody's living in the 60s, everything's 60s. And then, and it's like,
They keep
no,
up with modern
no, it's not.
yeah.
I mean, that's
We have time and money to change our furniture and our wallpaper every trend.
no, like it's like, to me that's like one of the great things about Stranger Things is like the house actually looks kind of 70s still. Because yeah,
Who's got money to update?
exactly. So especially then people weren't updating their houses. We weren't living in this home and garden HGTV Home Depot kind of like, you got to refresh it every year. No,
Yeah.
that's not how it was.
Yeah.
So I love that room. And then we cut to then we start them talking about performing at Filthy McNasty's, and they it's where we fell in love as a band.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a good job of kind of just a nice little, of showing slowly, steadily them getting better and them getting more, more people coming to see them, and that kind of, growing an audience, growing a following.
I loved that. I know it was a short snippet, but I just loved it because you did see it start evolving. Rod said, I can't put you into the clubs, but I can put you into this bar. But even with it being just a bar, they grew a following and it grew very organically, and it wasn't an overnight thing. They talked about it took them a while, but they finally grew, and you saw people who were obviously enjoying the music, obviously were fans. Um, I liked the short sequence. It was really good.
Well, and I mean, especially, the stories of the good bands is that you do it. The Beatles became the Beatles because they went to play it in Hamburg and they played constantly. That's how you do it. You're not going to do it as I'll just do it once a night, it once a week. It's you have to be doing it all. It's the 10,000 hours thing, Malcolm Gladwell. So they're playing, and as that's going on, there's a nice little shot of her, calling labels, getting turned down, mailing promo shots, which I mean, all of that stuff's expensive too. To think they, figured out how to pay for that. So she's doing her best to contribute to the band.
Well, she's part of the six.
Yeah.
So she's doing what she can do. She's not a musician, but she's doing what she can do by just contacting everybody that she could. And again, that goes back to her conversation with Karen. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think they were worth it. She thought they were worth it.
Yeah.
She thought they were worth it. So she was doing whatever she could to help support Billy and the band and get them where they dreamed of being. So she was playing. I mean, I could see that. You don't want to just be the girlfriend that hangs around and does nothing. Camila wanted to be a part of something. She wanted to be a part of this family, but she wanted to be a part of, moving them along in their journey. And so she wasn't just going to sit by and show up and go to shows. She was going to help steer the boat.
Yeah. So, but not really any success. And she did the whole trick, which they always do in like sitcoms. Like they're like, oh well, no, he's busy that night. Oh well, he's open the next night.
Well, how convenient. They'll be playing the next night. Yeah, so, that was funny.
But the executive does not show up, and I think as once of many times that people have blown them off. But Camila is still very positive, and she's like, she's singing along with the band. She's a good band girlfriend. Reminds me a lot of, again, of Liv Tyler in That Thing You Do, of, the being supportive of her men.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go
And
to
this is where we start seeing Billy starting to drink more.
yeah. He's
start
on stage
seeing-
drinking.
And it's not just a beer.
No,
we start seeing him drink more and more of the hard stuff.
the hard stuff.
So, I think this starts us off on a part of a journey that we're going to have to go through with him. That's not going to be easy, but I think they do some good foreshadowing there to get us prepared for it.
Well, and I think about that time, and I think about the bands that we used to go see, our little local bands, and the nights whenever they would have a full house, and then another night there'd be the four of us there. There'd be us.
We did some of those shows.
We would outnumber we would almost outnumber the band would outnumber us, definitely, more than once.
I vividly remember a show in Denton that we went to at Ote's, and this band was packing the house in Dallas.
Yes.
But for some reason on that random Thursday night.
No, it was like a Saturday night. That's probably why, because people didn't party in Denton.
On the weekends they were gone. But they were packing the house all over the place. And that night they did not pull in a crowd. And it was literally the band and 4 people out in the audience. And we had the best.
We had a great time
that night.
We had a great time.
Best time that night.
It was probably pretty demoralizing that you drove 45 minutes on a Saturday night to have,
to pull in a part of the door, and that's all you pull.
Yeah, you basically probably didn't even pay for gas. So
yeah.
So I mean, there's definitely a lot of nights like that for bands,
Maybe they got free beer or something.
Yeah, top of the world, and then not so much.
Very humbling.
And that's kind of where they are, so the
and this is the point where we meet Teddy, or they, yes. I guess.
Well, no, we meet Teddy, and he's at the office of a record label office, and he's basically had several unsuccessful albums in a row, and his boss is like, I want you to take an easy shot. We've got Dean Martin wants to record something. And
Dean Martin.
It just seems like such a weird clash to think of Dean Martin and being, on the same label and still relevant at the time of the Rolling Stones. And I guess you could kind of compare it to, like, in a way, like The Cure or Madonna, still kind of overlapping with the music we're listening to now, which that's actually older.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, like Dean Martin is still he's still kind of, a thing in the 50s, and this is only, 15 years later, 10 years later in some ways. So it's just funny when you think of just how different the two cultures are at this time, the cultures of pop, teen, younger people and older people. Whereas I feel like now it's different, but it's not, it's just so strange.
Yeah, well, and probably now that there are a ton more record labels than there were at that point in time, unless you were like some small independent label. I don't know.
No, there was more record. There were more record labels. So? Yes, there was tons of, because all of those record labels that a lot of they consolidated. So, because like Arista used to be its own thing, and Island was its own thing, and Geffen, and all of those ended up, these all got, there's basically like 3 big companies now.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
But I would say you don't need a label.
Right.
You can be Lil Nas X, and you can just put something together and put it on TikTok. So the of course, whether you make any money or not is another question, but the means to distribution to get your stuff out there there's access to all of us. That's why we're making a podcast, so but yeah, they tell him to take some easy shots, and then we cut back to so this is what's Teddy is in a crisis point here. So we get to we're back with the band, and they're in a diner, and Warren says, well, maybe Chuck was right. Maybe we shouldn't have done this. And, Billy is just openly pouring hard liquor from a flask into a coffee cup. And they're kind of bemoaning everything. And Karen is like, well, why are we the Dunn brothers? Like there's more of us than Dunn brothers. And they, they're debating, throwing out some bad names, and
Poison. That cracked me up.
That was funny. And they say, someone says,
we're never going to get the six of us to agree on something.
I believe it was Billy. I think Billy says, oh, we're never, because he just wants to keep it the same, because Billy does not like anybody else's input.
Nope.
And then they were like, well, why don't we call it the six? Because he said, yeah, there's no way the six of us are going to agree. And then Karen says, well, why not the six? And
there's a conversation about, there's only 5 people in the band. Well, we can't be the 5 because we have, the Jackson 5 and other relevant bands that use,
yes,
5. So they included Camila and decided, well, why don't we call ourselves the 6?
Yes.
Which I think it was it was an okay way to get to it based on what we know was missing from the book. They had to figure out some way to back into it. And I guess it was an okay way to back into it.
Yeah, it was a stretch.
It was a stretch.
It was indeed a stretch. They're really stretching that. But and I think that like the book really, it's very funny in the book, and we'll talk about that more later, how they get the name of the 6. But then we have a moment where we see walking by with
paths are crossing
with an order, we see Daisy. So,
and Billy turns and looks at her.
So, and I think this is definitely another one of those notes from Amazon, like we need to add this in because we can't go all of this time without them having some sort of interaction.
Paths crossed.
Yes.
She caught his eye walking past him. And what do we see? Camila pulling on his arm, bringing his attention back to the table.
Yes.
So
now we as she walks by, it's almost like it's a cut scene in some ways. And we're going to go back to the Daisy side of the story. And Simone is singing, she is singing A Song for You.
Oh,
and if you have not listened to the Donny Hathaway version of this,
it's so good.
I mean, Donny Hathaway is just one of the greatest vocalists of all time, and we lost him way too young. And you definitely check it out. It's so good. And the lyrics are also, I think, I like to just think about, they're choosing these lyrics. Why are they choosing them? And this one is, I think, such a good one because it's about like, if I die, will you know that you love me? It's more of like making sure that this song is to make sure that you know how I feel about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a really great song for when we think about the relationship of Simone and Daisy. And that, because one of the lines is, you're a friend of mine. And when my life is over, remember when we were together, we were alone, and I was singing this song to you. So I think it's just a very great choice kind of to show their friendship.
Their connection. Yeah. But do you think, so here's one of the things that I'm noticing, and I know that you are slowly ingesting the episodes, but it was always implied in the book that Simone was attempting to be like disco dance hits, that kind of thing. I don't see them bringing that forward in the show.
Well, doesn't the lower third though on her interview say disco singer or something when they introduce her?
I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure that when they say, they have like in lower third, it said that. So
I can remember. I just never.
I'm not
hearing it yet.
I'm trying
in this episode, we're not hearing it yet. We're not hearing the disco.
I'm trying to have my vision not, shaded by future.
I won't spoil anything for you.
Okay, so And
Oh,
then
but there was a funny line in the diner where they talked about pocket toast. That made me laugh.
oh yes, I forgot that part was so good. So because it was like, we don't have enough money, we're not gonna have money for food. And so
You better put that toast in your pocket.
yes. And Eddie puts the toast in, and you know, and this whole time you can
pocket toast.
yeah. So
Great line.
and
Eddie
then
has some great lines in the show so far. And in the book, he was kind of a dick.
who, Eddie?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't have the most likable character in the book.
No,
to me.
Eddie's angry.
And so he's got some, he's got some great lines. And I think I think I can see how they're making him angry in the show. I can see it easier than I could in the book, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
Because I felt like she wrote the character. There was a lot of conflicting ego between him and Billy.
Mhm.
I'm not seeing so much the conflicting egos in the show. And so maybe that's why, I don't know. We'll see how it evolves for you.
Well, I do think Warren has a lot of great lines too.
Yep.
Warren in 1997, Warren has some sweet things, you know, going on. Like just, you know, there's some really funny lines from him, which they're also in the book. His interview stuff is hilarious. So
okay, so I got us distracted. So we're
where
at
were
the
we?
Troubadour for Hoot Night.
Yeah.
Simone has sung her beautiful rendition of that song.
I mean, and she got some applause, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, whoa, the place is full. And then Daisy comes on stage, and
she walks on she introduces Daisy, and then Daisy comes on stage.
Yes.
And sings a very beautiful song.
She sings 2 Against 3.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, that was written by Blake Mills, who he was a former member of the band Simon Dawes, and then he quit, and then the band became just Dawes. And Dawes is one of my favorite kind of bands that currently still doing stuff. And I like Dawes because I basically was looking for a band. I'm like, I want a band that sounds like you know, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, that cares about harmonies and stuff. And somehow I found this band. And so isn't that funny? And they are very Laurel Canyon. That's what their influences are. So if you like this kind of music, I would suggest listening to Dawes, even though Blake Mills is no longer with them, but there's definitely that vibe. So and Daisy comes on and sings, and I think it's a really good song. But she meets Teddy, and Teddy wants to work with her, but Daisy's skeptical. Why do you think she's skeptical?
Well, I think her experience with men in the music industry so far and what we've seen has not been completely positive. She has had her music stolen from her, as we saw with Stumble and Sublime.
Yeah.
Then we had, you know, somebody trying to take one of her ideas for her movie writer friend.
Yeah.
So I think she understandably is skeptical because what she's experienced so far has been extremely negative. It's always about people trying to take from her. So right. I don't think she wants to give that up.
Yeah.
My thought.
Yeah, no, and I would say, just as Teddy tells her, you need to be shaped, I think that this song is good, 2 Against 3, but I do think it's kind of meandering and a little boring. Like,
well, her style on stage is, and I think we talked about it in the very first episode. Or maybe I made a note about it. We never talked about it, but her voice is super inconsistent to me in that first episode.
Yeah.
We see her starting out very young, singing this really kind of bluesy kind of music. And then she starts evolving, but she's still like, to me, she was still all over the place and she still has not yet found her sound.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the reasons I was like, well, she finally got the courage to get up on stage because she never saw herself on stage. So kudos, right. She's gotten up on stage. Now we just need to figure out what her sound is going to be. And then he's trying to talk to her and she's like, well, maybe I don't want to be shaped.
Yes.
Well, to me, that is very, at that age, we all think that we know best, and we stand by our thoughts, and we're not going to let anybody sway us. But the reality is she's extremely naive, new, and she's, not been able to prove herself yet. So to disregard the opinions of somebody who's been in this business, who's been turning out music, to me was, it was naive.
Yeah.
But she eventually figured it out. But
And then back on Merv, we get Teddy saying, sometimes the back of somebody is the best way to see who they are.
So what does this mean?
Well, I think it means the fact that if somebody is willing to, if someone is like, I'm not ready for you. Yeah, I don't know.
I was trying to figure out what he meant by that.
I mean, it sounds really deep, but is it?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I think maybe in the sense of when you're famous and everybody's like, ooh, I want to work with Teddy Price. I'll do anything to work with Teddy Price. By her turning on him and being like, I don't know if I want this, she's actually being genuine.
Yeah.
And for him to actually have somebody say no to him, that's, maybe that's what he means. Yeah.
That was a lot for that time.
So now the guys, we come back to the guys. So this is speeding up. As these sequences are speeding up, we get to they're Graham, they're out like it looks like maybe a liquor store or a convenience store. And I would say in California, I mean, probably back then you could actually buy liquor any place, whereas we live in Texas, we have to have separate liquor stores because
screwed up alcohol laws
because of the Bible. Because
you can be on one side of the street and you can buy liquor, but the other side of the street you can only get beer and wine.
I mean, I would say when I first went to a Costco in Los Angeles, and you can just buy giant tequilas, like you could buy, I was like,
there's a Costco over here in Fort Worth near us that has a liquor store now, but it is literally a separate entrance. That you have to come out of the store and go into to be able to buy your gigantic Kirkland vodka.
Yeah, no. And like, I mean, you could just go to the equivalent of like a Walgreens. They have a Longs. I think they've been bought by CVS, but they had a Longs, and you could just go there and just get liquor, and any time of day, Sundays included. So
but at least we're not like Oklahoma where we have weird 3-2 beer.
Well, they finally got rid of that. Well, I mean, what can we say about Oklahoma? You can get pot in Oklahoma, you can't in Texas. So whatever.
Okay. I'm sorry. Tangent.
But
the convenience store one night.
And they've got it. They're in the van, and Graham sees Teddy Price going in there, and he sees him go in there, and then Billy's coming out with a bag of just a sad bag.
So he has 3 packages of toilet paper. And again, I want to say set design, aesthetic, they never miss a beat, because that toilet paper was colored toilet paper.
Yes.
And if you are a Gen Xer or a boomer, you know how popular pink, blue.
Yes.
You wanted to have the colored toilet paper. If you had colored toilet paper in your house, you were fancy. In my opinion, if you had colored toilet paper in the house, you had a UTI all the time.
It needed to match the crocheted toilet cover or furry toilet cover on your lid.
Yes.
And on the tank lid. All it had to match.
Yes. Or the Kleenex box that your grandmother like made with the little plastic like weaving things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all had to match.
Everything needed to be upholstered in the bathroom.
But I could see, and I don't remember which brand it was from the 70s, but I can see it in my head. It was the brand that had like little, that had like babies, like photo illustration, picturesque looking different babies on every color.
Yeah.
But I know it's stupid for me to notice that, but it was pink, it was blue, and it was white. Yes. And all I could think was that crap itched.
Because we decided somewhere we finally decided that stuff made your itch.
Yes.
Okay.
There were a lot of scented things in the 70s that they wanted to put near parts of female bodies.
Yes. Yes.
Didn't need to be there.
Right. Exactly. So, so Graham's like, so, he comes out with his sandbag of toilet paper, and it was
and
like,
beer.
and just like, maybe, probably a couple of Slim Jims. And then he goes, and Graham's like, Teddy Price is in there, and Billy's like, what? And he like basically like throws the grocery bag. This little scene was really funny to me. Throws the grocery bag in there, and then like walks real fast, doesn't quite run, like does like a fast nerdy walk, and then kind of slows down to as he walks into it, so he can
Cool.
slowly,
real cool.
yeah, so he can casually slide up to Billy, and so I mean to Teddy, and Teddy.
He has some great lines.
And
in this exchange, Teddy has some great lines with his
Yes.
first exchange with Billy, I thought.
Because Billy's like, hey, aren't you Teddy Price? I really like your work.
But I will say, Billy knew Teddy's work.
Yeah.
Not just he knew who Teddy Price was, but he knew who Teddy Price's work was, and he threw that out there, which
Yes.
Anytime you're talking to somebody, if you can give them specifics, you're going to hook them in really quick.
Yes.
But Billy, you're making me uncomfortable.
Well, because he kept standing there and kind of following him, and he's like, dude, you're making me uncomfortable. And basically Billy's like, you got to, we're in a band, just, give us a chance. And Billy, he's at a low point here. And he's like, first of all, he's going to have to do a Dean Martin record. And then some nobody girl who he does think has potential has turned him down.
Poor Teddy. He's not in a good spot right now.
And so, and then, Billy's like, oh, come on, give us a chance. And he's like, all right. And so he gives him his card. And I would just also say, like, things were just so hard in the world of analog 60s and 70s. And getting somebody's business card meant so much. And God forbid you lose it, which would probably happen to me.
And you can't take a picture of it with your phone.
No.
If in the event that you do lose it. Yeah, you had to keep up with those.
And Billy does this thing, and it's like, you only get one chance. Are you ready? And Billy's like, yeah, I'm ready. So then we cut to, we're at Billy is in the bedroom with Camila. It's late at night, and he's stressed about what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And so he starts playing a song.
Freaking out.
Yeah, so he starts playing a ballad called Silver Nail, which is very not what we've heard from this band before. And Eddie's like, I don't want to play that. That's not who we are. I don't want to play a ballad for this guy. We got to show him what kind of rock and roll we are. But of course, Billy gets his way, and he starts playing it, and we don't really hear much of it. We hear a few lines from Silver. We don't hear a whole lot.
Yeah, but you can go out.
Yes.
So Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify have put together these playlists for every episode that you can go out and listen to. You can actually listen to the full version of the song. So they have Dunn Brothers songs. They have, pre Daisy Jones and the Six music out in these playlists by episodes. One of the things that I noticed in the scene where he is trying to figure out what they're going to play is like Camila was trying to support him and say, well, why don't you play this? No, it's not good. I mean, he just kept like,
well, and I forgot one thing that
snapping at her every freaking suggestion she made. And I'm just like, I would just be like, okay, whatever, dude, I'm going to shut up now because I'm tired of getting my head snapped off.
Well, and then him like, I'm going to go get more to drink.
And she stopped him.
Yeah. And she's like, no.
Wait a minute.
And how many times has she had to do that? I mean,
probably more and more as they were approaching that time. She was having to do that more and more.
And the thing with living with an addict is that exhaustion right there. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we don't really hear much about it. And the lyrics to this one, maybe I'm just not.
If you listen to the whole song, it's real. It is not to me the kind of song that you want to play to get your break.
Right.
It's like not the attention grabber song that I would think an artist would want to play to get their break.
Then this
wasn't the song.
Look, like this one, It's fine. I don't like his voice in this one. I feel like it's too high a register for him. It's just not my favorite song.
Yeah. No.
And so it makes it a little hard to believe whenever Teddy's like, oh, it blew my socks off. I'm like,
Did? Really?
I mean, cool. Awesome.
Maybe
Yay.
that's why your last few albums haven't done so well, dude.
Yeah.
Because
I
that
mean,
like,
song's
the one that you said this is gonna be it.
I mean, I don't know. Like it, I mean, yeah. I'm sure there's some people who love it, but this song to me, and especially, I just don't like the register he's singing in for that. It's too high for him.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. So they go and he's back on Merv. He said they knocked my socks off, and then you see all of them are just like celebrating and freaking out in the van, because they know that they're going to get this opportunity. And they say people think we played him that one song, and that's what won us over. And he goes back and he says, no, we had to work for it.
Yeah.
So again, we didn't like the song. That's what the scene starts with him saying, introducing them and starting to play that song. They never actually played it. But it's obvious that they had to do more than just play that one song, which is good because again, that song wasn't it for me. Would not have sold me to give them a recording session. Would not have sold it for me.
Yeah. And so then they show a kind of a quick montage of them, and like eventually like they're playing the troubadour, they're playing the whiskey, like so, and then outside the whiskey, they've just played a gig and Teddy tells them that they're going to cut an album. And it's funny because he's like, he and Billy are talking, and we see this relationship established between Billy and Teddy. And he's like, man, we were late, my vocals weren't here. And Teddy's like, no, man, you know what? You're ready. We're ready. We're going to record an album. And Billy's very critical of everyone, not of everybody.
He was. He had something to say about everybody.
Yeah.
Including himself.
Yes.
So he was super, super harsh, but Teddy was trying to kind of let him know that no, they were ready. They had done the work. It was time to record.
Right. And I would say very typical of somebody who really desperately, desperately wants someone to approve of them is to really down yourself so that person will go, no. It gives that person the opportunity to give you this thing that you need to tell you that you are good. And I feel like that's what Billy was really doing there. Yeah. Like I don't know how much of it he really meant, but he just desperately wants Teddy's approval so much.
And I think we start seeing that relationship build right there.
Yeah.
Like that's the start. Teddy had said he didn't want to be anybody's father, but he's acquiring a family, whether he likes it. He's acquiring children, whether he likes it or not.
So then we're back to Teddy is back at the diner where Daisy's working, and she's like, what, are you stalking me? And he's like, no. He goes, I just think that you've got talent, but your songs, they don't take me anywhere. They're meandering around. They're not songs.
They're just lyrics.
Yes. And probably really, Daisy, yes, her parents have never been supportive, but she's also never put herself out there and then had anybody tell her really anything about her work.
Well, yeah, because remember the scene where mom, back in the first episode, she finds mom in her room, picking through her diary, reading her lyrics, and she says, were they good? And mom says, oh, you're pretty, Margaret.
Right.
So she never had anybody tell her. But I think especially in this time period, the singer-songwriter time period that they were in, you had to tell a story. There had to be a build. There had to be a resolution, not always necessarily happily ever after, but there had to be a true story. That's what people wanted to hear as they were listening to music. They wanted to hear a story.
Well, and I would say listening to her song that she performed at the Troubadour earlier in this episode, it goes back to, I think it is kind of meandering. Where is it going? Make it a little too long, and I have listened to it again, tried to listen to it, and I'm like, And I mean, just on the little bit of, I'm not really paying attention. I'm trying not to read any critical stuff or anything, even like my nerdy Facebook groups. I'm not reading people's posts about the show because I want to save that till the end after I've done all of it. But I have seen a few people like, oh, the songwriting in these first couple episodes. So I think actually it's deliberate. But so he says, your songs aren't songs, but here's a song. And then he plays it on the jukebox, and it's Son of a Preacher Man, and he walks out.
That was a song.
Yes. Now that is a song.
That is a song. That is a song written by Hurley and Wilkins, who went on to do all kinds of things with all kinds of people during that time period. But that's a song. And one of the reasons I think that it's a true song is that it is still a song that, even though we weren't really of age at the time, we could still listen to that song, and it invokes something.
Well, I mean, it is always a standard on any of the song contest shows. Like
for a female who's not a soprano, I think that's like,
if you're option. Not like on the diva track, like the Jennifer Hudson, that track is a singer. They, especially early American Idol, they were always going to have you sing Son of a Preacher Man.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. For those of us that don't sing soprano.
Yeah. Well, and
we need something in our range.
And I do like this scene. I don't know if we needed the gratuitous nudity, even though I don't care, bodies be bodies, but Daisy's having sex, and the guy's like, oh, and she seems distracted, and the guy's like, do you want to change positions? She's like, yeah, and she just gets off of him and just starts writing in her book, her diary.
So and again, this is going to be off on a tangent. So as a part of Book Talk World, okay, and even before Book Talk, as a part of the book and the romance erotica genre, there is a trilogy of books from a British author by the name of Leslie Jones. She's written this trilogy, and it is about a band. And this reminded me of some of the scenes that she wrote in her book about the main character being in the middle of
coitus
acts and starting to hear a rhythm. And starting to tap out a rhythm, and being inspired and immediately writing after he came to a conclusion. So it it did. I mean, she started hearing something in her head, and she had to write it down. I can't fault her for that. Girl got to do what a girl got to do. Right. So she's a songwriter.
In 1997, Daisy says, it was the first time that I wanted to live up to somebody's expectations of me.
You could tell by the look in her face when she started writing down that it was clicking. She was getting a story.
Yeah.
She wanted somebody to be proud of her. She wanted to meet somebody's expectations. Teddy was the first, Teddy and Simone were probably the first people that she ever had in her life that she wanted to make them proud. She didn't want to disappoint them in any way.
Right. I mean, I think Simone, it was more of this collegial, like we're on the same level in the show, not so much in the book, but in the show. Whereas Teddy, definitely the theme is here. He's, the father figure.
Yeah.
So, so then we go to
the recording,
and it looks a lot like Sound City, where
everybody's recorded.
Yeah, and it's no longer exists, but Dave has all the equipment from it, and it's.
If you have not seen that documentary on Sound City, I strongly recommend it. You'll be blown away at how much music came out of that studio.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
And I would say if you can go on any studio tour, you should. Like I going to the Stax one and the Sun Studios was so moving to me. And if you could go to, especially the Stax one, just because but I really want to go to the Motown Museum, and I want to go to the one in Muscle Shoals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just, I don't know. There's something about it. There's something special about it.
The Sun Studio one, I know I took that tour. I was, I've been twice. I took it in college. I went with my parents on a vacation, and then Rich and I went back to Memphis, and we went to it again.
Yeah,
and it was a very special to just be in that room and know what happened in that room.
Yeah, I mean,
it's pretty cool.
The Stax Museum is really cool for that, and also I mean, and I'll just throw that out there. If you're going to Memphis, then also go to the Civil Rights Museum. But that's another
Yes,
tangent for us.
that
But
is
yes,
a must see.
I love that the look of it. I thought it was very good, and that's where they recorded Rumors. So and then yeah, and it just that, oh, we've got to create a vibe here.
So the scarves on the lamps, let me just tell you, I did that one time with my sisters and we caught something on fire. It doesn't always work out. The aesthetic doesn't always work out as you hoped and planned, because I can vividly remember as a kid, my sisters and I placing something like a scarf over a lamp and it caught freaking fire. So, it looks really good, but just be careful out there. If you try to replicate that vibe, young kids, it doesn't always work out like you want it to.
Maybe just now just use your LED lamp and
There you go.
So then it's they're recording and they're doing the song "Look Me in the Eye" is the song in the background, and Billy says everything has gone so slowly and now it was going so fast, and they recorded the album in 6 days, and then they're getting ready to hit the road, and then Camila tells Billy she is pregnant, and so big moment,
Huge.
and
it's a big moment. I mean, if it's planned, it's a big
yes.
moment. If it's unplanned with somebody who doesn't have it's just a big moment. And I don't know, you could just Billy's demeanor, you could just read a lot from him
Yes.
at that point.
Well, and I think I don't know. I feel like in the book, Camila was more just like, I'm pregnant. Because you know what I'm saying? Where I feel like in this, she was much more upset and like, oh, what are we going to do? Whereas in the book, I felt like I don't really like this read on Camila at this moment. Because like Camila knows how babies are made.
Right.
Like Camila, I mean, the pill is around.
Yes.
And she's consistently having sex with Billy. So I don't know, because I feel like in the book it was more kind of like, I'm ready to have a kid. That's what I'm going to do. Maybe not, it was more implied. I just felt like she seemed more desperate, and I didn't really like that take on her.
Well, I think that desperation then fed into Billy's panic.
Yes. So they, we got married 1997. Camila says we got married that night. And they show them rushing to get a picture.
Very 70s look with the flower crown and the macrame backdrop.
Yes.
Very good aesthetic.
I would say I love the description of the wedding in the book, so we can talk about that later. But I think they do a really good job. It's very different, but it's still good. One of my favorite things is Camila shows a picture of them. It's cut off, you can't see their faces, and she's like, this is the only picture we have of our wedding, because Warren was in charge of taking the photos, and as 1997 Warren says on his boat, mescaline is a powerful drug. I would not know.
I'll plead the fifth.
So Eddie goes up to Camila and says, oh, I'm happy for you. But it's so clear that he is not happy for you.
No, he's not.
And beautiful Todd Rundgren song is playing in the background. I love Todd Rundgren. So
me too.
And it couldn't be more 70s, okay?
Yes, I know. Can you get more 70s than Todd Rundgren?
I mean, and like Todd Rundgren, yeah, just so interesting. So, and then we see Billy on the phone with his mom, and he tells her that they got married, but he doesn't tell her about the baby.
Why is that? I don't know. One thing at a time? We don't want to overwhelm her?
Yeah, and
I don't know.
And Graham's like, you didn't tell her that you're going to be a dad. And he's like, ugh.
And that moment where, Graham is excited and he says, man, you didn't tell her you were going to be a dad. Like, Sam Claflin just, nailed that moment. Yeah. That moment was absolute perfection to me, because everything changed. It's
Yeah.
like that realization just, I mean, he'd had a flickering moment when Camille told him,
Camila.
and I think he knew he needed to respond differently for her because she was upset. But in this moment, when his brother made it a reality, when his brother
Mhm.
made it a reality that he was going to be a dad, everything changed.
Yeah.
And it was really, it was a split second, but it was a hard split second to watch to me.
So then we cut to the interviewer asking Billy, "What do you remember about the tour?" And the look of pain and shame on his face,
Yeah.
and the look of shame and pain and hesitancy on every single band member's face, um, was really good. And
Well,
Camila, yeah,
and we don't know yet, but there's other reasons why. I mean, who wants to relive their darkest moments?
right,
I mean, nobody wants to relive that. But in this case, I think that they didn't want to relive it with the interviewer for
right,
specific reasons that we
yes,
won't spoil. But I mean, who wants to relive a time where they were at their worst, or where you sat by and watched somebody get to their worst point and they didn't do anything about it? So there's some guilt on their part, probably,
yes. I would
that
say
that they didn't do something about it.
yes.
Yeah.
But I would say, yes, I think that the hesitancy, yes, and shame is on all of them. I mean, of course, Billy might have more as a person who was acting, but they all enabled it.
Yeah. And Camilla says, I remember everything.
Yes,
And again, who wouldn't, as we're about to
yes.
see.
And we see a kind of a montage of her calling and him answering, and he's more and more out of it. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to call last night." And she's like, "You did call." And he's like, "Oh, he didn't remember." And she goes, "Well, we miss you." And he's like, "We? Who's we?" And she says, "Me and the baby." Well, then after that, it's him not even answering her calls.
Yeah.
And not calling her.
The road was a great opportunity for him to hide from and forget about what was really coming. The road allowed him to do that. And then you add on to it whatever else he was taking or drinking. That just made it even worse.
Yes.
So
And
then we have Camilla finally getting a hold of Karen.
Mm-hmm.
And she asks if Billy's around, and no, I don't know where he is. And then is everything okay, Karen? I have feelings about this.
She should have told her. I don't
There's girl
understand.
code. There's woman code. And
Yes.
she didn't have to tell her point blank. But she could have said, I think it would be a good idea if you came out.
Right. Or I don't think he's doing well. I think yes. I don't think she needs to be like he's whoring up, he's
Right.
being a
think
big
he
old
needs you.
slut and cheating on you. But
He needs you.
Yes.
There could have been he needs you. Do you think you could get out here? Something like that. But I think because again, Camilla did her a solid when she
Yes.
asked,
Yes.
would I be doing the right thing? And Camilla was straightforward with her and told her, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in him.
Yes.
But when that was turned, Karen protected her own interest, and that she broke
I don't
code.
know. It would take me a long time to forgive. Like it
Mm-hmm.
reminds me, honestly, this is such a tangent, but in 30 something, a show that a lot of people had,
we need a sound effect here. Dun, dun, dun. Gen X moments.
30 something.
Gen X moments.
Which why as 20 somethings we were obsessed with, boomers, but because we were told to be. Nancy, whose husband repeatedly cheated on her, and they're getting a divorce, and they go on a camping trip, and basically she finds out from all of her friends that they all knew what he was doing, and no one said anything to her. And
that
oof,
that pissed me off. That pissed me off then, and just now here sitting at 50 something and having friends that have gone through this infidelity and not being somebody that knew about it, and finding out after they found out, the spouse found out, that's That's
Well,
hurtful.
and
That's
also it's that
super hurtful.
weird thing where I feel like Karen, I don't really thought of, I would say if I'm this and I'm reading this in a way, I don't think Karen really thought of Camila as an equal. I think
Well, no,
Karen,
because she was just the girlfriend of the band member.
yes. And
And
that's
Karen's first interest was to have a band that was
Yes.
playing, performing, out there doing their thing. And so she protected her own interest
yes.
by not outing Billy for what was really going on the road.
Right.
So,
and no, that's
Yeah.
not cool. So,
Nope.
but I would say, so Camila shows up, and I would say Camila's maternity clothes are so spot on and cute.
Again,
So cute. Like that turtleneck and like just in that, you know, so cute. And she shows up and she's knocking on the motel room door, and nobody's there. And the guys walk up and they're like, oh shit. And they kind of are like, and then she looks over in the van and she goes over, opens the door, and there's Billy getting serviced by a groupie.
And she turns around to Eddie and Warren and says, you were covering for him.
Yes.
Because to her, they were just as much her family as they were his family.
Yes.
And to be betrayed by your own family, that they didn't even have the respect to tell her something was going on. That to me personally would be not equal to the betrayal, but pretty fucking close.
Well, especially I would say Graham. I would feel even more hurt by Graham. And I would say they wouldn't have had to tell her about the infidelity, but to not tell her how bad he was with the drugs and that he very well could die.
Yeah. If they had spoken up when he started getting out of control with the alcohol and with the drugs, maybe it wouldn't have gotten to that point where he was slutting around. But they didn't, because again, they were upholding the bro code. But Camila's family, and they should have protected her.
Yes. And also I feel like goes back to, they don't really consider her equal. She's just the girl who came along with the band. So then we cut to the hotel room, and this is pretty much straight from the book, where Camila tells him to take a shower.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't just take a shower.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to talk to your husband after you caught.
Yeah. Gross.
Yeah. No, gross.
Gross.
Go take a shower.
I don't want to smell that shit.
No.
And
who would want to?
But of course he's not good, and he steps out of the shower and then immediately snorts some blow. And I'm assuming it's cocaine. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he's still talking afterwards means it's not cocaine. It's cocaine and not heroin.
Right.
And it's like, and that is the end for Camila. And she tells him.
She fucking rips him. And God, I love this scene in the book and this scene in the show.
Yeah.
Are reasons why I love her character.
Yeah.
Because the fucking energy she brought to this scene, she was hurt. She was betrayed, not only by her husband, but by her friends. She could have completely fallen apart and been a sobbing mess, but she wasn't, man. Now, she might have had some tears in her eyes, but we know sometimes when we get super pissed off, tears can happen.
Well, I'm just, as I say all the time, normalize crying.
So in the book she says, so here I'm reading, I believe what I said was, and earmuffs, but I believe what I said was, who the fuck do you think you are cheating on me? You think there's a woman alive who is better than what you have? I made him take a shower before I would say another word to him. And then Billy goes on and says, I wanted her to leave. I thought a lot about it, and that's what I'd been up to. I'd been hoping she'd cut me loose. That night, Camila and I were sitting in the hotel room after I got out of the shower, and I could feel myself sobering up, and I didn't like it. I pulled out a bump, and remember, Camila looked at me and said, what are you trying to do? She didn't say it in an exasperated way. She was really asking me, what was I trying to do? I didn't know how to answer her. I just shrugged, and I remembered how stupid I felt shrugging at a time like this with a woman like that. The woman carrying my child, and I was shrugging like I was a 10-year-old boy. And she stared at me, waiting for more of an answer, and I didn't have one. So she said, "If you think I'm going to let you screw up our life, you've lost your mind." And she walked out the door. That scene, the scene in the book, the scene where she's like, "You have until you better get this shit figured out before this baby gets here,
Right.
because otherwise it's not going to be good."
Yeah.
She stood up for herself.
Yeah.
She had always supported him and always did everything she could to build him up and to give him confidence. And the first opportunity he had to enjoy that success, he fucked around on her.
Yeah. But we know why. We know why. We know because he doesn't have a dad. And he didn't want to be like his dad and screw it up. So he thought the easiest thing to do was just to fulfill that. Like deep down, he didn't think he can be a good dad. So I'll just go ahead and do
Be
it.
a fuck up.
Yeah, I'll do it
I'll
on
just
my
get it over with
terms.
now.
Like let me just get it over with now, get it done on my terms, which is such a a typical human reaction to these people, especially people who have been abused or things like that. Like that's what you do.
It's going to go bad anyway. So I'm just going to speed it up.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to make it go bad the way I want it to go bad.
Yeah. Then at least because I'm so afraid I'm going to get hurt, I will just do the hurting first.
Billy was so weak in that moment. And but it wasn't, I don't know that was his rock bottom yet.
Oh no, I don't think so.
But it was a start of the downhill slide.
Yeah.
So then we've cut to Daisy and she's writing some lyrics and she seems super pleased and super happy with what she got done.
Yeah. And you can tell she's been really working hard. She's really focusing.
She had finally written her song.
And then we go to 1997 Billy and him saying, "I thought I could get it out of my system."
And Warren says, "My brother was always great at lying to himself."
Oh yeah, it was great.
So they continued on the road. She caught him. They continued on the tour. Camila went home. But
he's doing worse. No. And like let's think about this. Like this is 71, 72. There's no Betty Ford clinic. I mean, there's AA, but usually if you were an alcoholic, you got put in a psych ward. So.
And I don't know if we have timelines off, but I mean, ultimately, as we're about to talk about, he does get some help.
Yes. So Billy's doing worse. Like he's just slurring on stage and like he doesn't even know what cities he's in. He plays so bad and everybody's like the crowd is pissed.
He is so off key. It was painful to listen.
It was actually very good. It was very good.
It was very good at being off key. He was very good at being off key.
And I would say once again, things are starting to build again. We have quite a pretty long time that's about Billy and that side of it, but things are starting to build. Kind of, we're getting there again and building. And Teddy tells Billy that he's a dad and that he has a little girl.
He walks off stage. They walk off stage. He accuses Warren of calling Teddy.
Yeah.
And Warren says, "I didn't call him."
Warren or Graham?
Oh, Graham. I'm sorry.
This one's Graham. I know. I keep switching their names.
He accuses Graham of calling Teddy.
Yes.
Thinking that it's because I'm drinking and I'm doing drugs and I'm out of control. So they called Teddy on me. They called Dad.
Yeah.
They called Dad to come in and scold me. Mm-hmm. But that's not what it was. Teddy was there
to
let him know.
Yeah, you had a baby.
To let him know. Camila had the baby. So they leave.
Yeah.
And he drives from
and
San
also
Diego.
in the shot of he doesn't say anything. They just cut to the 1997 interview and Billy just looking still
traumatized
by it.
Yeah. Guilty,
that's the better word. Yes.
Yeah,
no, because he did it to himself.
Yeah, guilty to see what was going on. So Teddy told him he had a baby girl. They got in the car. We're going to make the drive back from San Diego up to LA. Has to pull over at one point because Billy needs to throw up. And then they get to Cedars-Sinai.
Yeah.
And Billy, and this is a little bit different too, because Billy says, "I can't go in there. I can't have her meet me looking like this." And so, he's got one of two options. Basically, Teddy tells him.
Well, he tells him, like, first he's just like, get the fuck out of my car, man. Like, these girls you need to man up. These people are waiting for you.
Your girls are waiting for you.
Yes.
Girls. And
he
he can't know that. And in the book, he goes into the lobby and Teddy goes up to see Camila.
Yeah.
And he waits and he comes back down and he said, Camila says you have two choices. You can get your ass up there right now and be a good husband and a father, or I can drive you to rehab. Those are your choices.
Right.
Camila didn't give him any options in the book.
Yeah.
In the book. But that truly was what you can either man up and go up there and be the father and the husband that you need to be in this moment, or your other option is to go to rehab because you got to get fixed.
Right. And so Teddy
start.
And like Teddy, I don't think Teddy wanted to take on any of this responsibility. Like, I think he's a reluctant, but he's also
be a dad.
So
he didn't want to be a dad.
And Teddy says, I hadn't, and on Merv Griffin, he says, I hadn't planned on being anyone's father. I guess some things are just out of your control. And he does the extra thing. He takes him to rehab. And he drives him, and as he's dropping him off at rehab, Daisy drops off her song.
Okay, so we see Daisy dropping off this wonderfully packaged cassette tape recorded in her and Simone's den on some little cassette player, 2-track, 4-track. And then we cut to a shot of Camila in this hospital room with this brand new baby all by herself, which that just, that got me.
Yeah.
And we cut to modern day 1997 Billy, and he says, same old rock and roll tale, drinking, the loneliness, the drugs. And the interviewer says, yeah, but that's usually the end of the story. And for you, it was the beginning.
Yes.
And scene.
And while, this is, it's a nice building. They jammed a lot into this one episode. And we, for episode 3, and there's, I know why Amazon released them in the way they did.
So what do you think? Because I wish they would have drug it out and made us wait.
Because story arc, like, we're going to have a 1, 2, 3, there's a story arc here. They kind of did this with, I would say, with Andor, they would release like sometimes 2 or 3. It's to satisfy the people who like to binge and then the people who like to drag it out. Cool.
Anyway, so that's it for us. That is episode 3 in the bag, talking about episode 2. Don't forget, this podcast will be on YouTube if you want to watch us. It's going to be on all of your favorite streaming services.
Yes.
You can contact us on Instagram at Nobody's Muses. You can email us at nobodiesmuses@gmail.com. Next week, I'm excited for next week.
Next week, I am
episode 3.
Yeah, I just been taking notes on it, and it is just a blast. And honestly, if episode 3 had not been as good as it was, I don't know if we would be doing this podcast right now.
I do not disagree with you on that one. I do not disagree with you on that one.
And maybe that's why they released it in 3, because I don't know if after I'd spent 2, because I'll usually give a show maybe 2 or 3 episodes, because pilots are always hard. So, but so anyway,
episode 3
it's going to be a banger. I can't wait to talk about it. It's going to be so much fun, and we will, we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Bye.
I was talking to, a Gen Zer, and she's like, oh, I'm going to wait till all of them are out so I can watch them all at once. So
it's not that kind of time.
I don't know. I just like, I'm old school because I like to watch Abbott Elementary every Wednesday night. I usually watch it Thursday on Hulu, but I'm cool. I like the trickle, but a lot of people don't. So
appointment television.
Yes.
Millennials are probably the last generation of appointment television where we had to be at, in front of the TV at a particular time. Millennials at least had TiVo and DVRs, but there was no on demand. There was no, maybe we could have gotten a VHS tape, but if you ever tried to
Yeah.
set up a VHS tape to record, that was
Girl,
always a
girl,
crapshoot.
I recorded my stories in college.
Oh my
I
God. You
recorded
had
my
to,
Young and the
what'd you record?
Restless.
Oh, Young and the Restless. Okay.
I would record Young and the Restless, and I forget how it worked because my roommate also, she watched All My Children. So somehow I could watch. We were advanced VCR users, so I could watch Young and the Restless, and then she could record All My Children.
But like, I
Anyway,
can remember the first VCR my parents had. It had like some like little weird dialy thing on it, and you can never like get it absolutely pristinely set on the correct station. So you'd end up with a VCR with like the snow, and it
oh
would, oh my
no.
God, it was always an issue.
Well,
But yes, we did evolve into better VCRs where you could do a better job of recording your shows. And then you could record on one channel and watch on another channel. We
yeah,
thought that was big
high
time. But
high
yeah,
time.
I get what you're saying, because there's the way Gen Z ingest television and news is completely different from the way we ingested those things.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, I like it still. I mean, that's why personally, I think that's why the HBO shows are still considered prestige television, because they release them every week. People anticipate them. I mean,
mhm.
everyone I know was talking about The Last of Us. I mean, I don't care about Succession, but that's what's going to be on my feed for the next 10 weeks.
Yes, you're
You know,
absolutely correct.
I
I
mean,
don't watch that show either, but it's been showing up on my FYP all the time.